The Emperor Nero was born in 37 AD. He was emperor from 54 to 68. As we know, he became a terrible persecutor of Christians after the fire of Rome, which broke out on the 16th of July in the year 64 AD. Contemporaries surmise that he may well have been responsible for it, so as to reconstruct a great Rome, which would have been a monument of his greatness for the rest of all history to see. Of course, it backfired, and the fact that he was suspected of this meant that he had to find very quickly a scapegoat, and of course the Christians were an easy target, and so they were rounded up and atrociously tortured and martyred. Tacitus, a Roman historian, talks about the terrible punishments they had. There's no point in going into it now, but just to be aware of the nature of things, he was quite happy to feast in the evening while Christians were being used as human torches in his gardens, burning slowly to death in bags. And if I'm not mistaken, you might find animals also sewn into the bags. This then was the end of our brethren. About 979 are mentioned in an early Roman martyrology, and we have names of early martyrs coming through in the Roman canon to this day. In 59 AD, the emperor had his mother poisoned, so she died, and also his own wife strangled. With regard to glory, because these emperors had an apotheosis, they were proclaimed popularly to be equal to the gods. As regards glory, it is something to be aware of, that we too might be on that wild goose chase. Is it not true? We want limelight, subtly, but it's true. How many spend their time in the cybersphere wanting followers, wanting likes, wanting to be posted to other people, attention seeking? It's the same phenomenon coming through in a different way. Glory is often in inverse proportion to attention. There was a great mystic who by now is a saint on the album of Saints of the Church. Not very long ago she was canonized. Saint Miriam, that's Marie de Jésus crucifié, Mary of Jesus crucified, the Lebanese stigmatized Carmelite nun, lay sister, who had great gifts, and she knew where people went at the moment of death and why. People were quite surprised. There was a holy superior somewhere who they thought would have gone straight to heaven. Not at all. She was having a rough time on the other side. and the good holy mystic knew why. Another, very hidden nun, went like a rocket, a tiny moment in purgatory, but zoomed up into high heaven to her surprise. And it was given to understand that it was for this simple reason, that for the whole of her religious life she had not once lacked in charity. Glory? No. Most probably she would have been the very one that they would have treated badly. They're easy targets, like the Christians under Nero. They won't do anything back. Don't take it all. Alas, the quest of glory, it's in every sphere of life. Academia, sports, the media, love, it's all a huge wild goose chase. And the one element of glory is not handled. For glory is the beatific vision, in which we don't exist, as it were. But boy, do we start to exist where it matters, to share the glory of the saints, to gaze at the Lamb, till the end of eternity, which has no end. One time, that saint whizzed into a tree and was in ecstasy. And the Mother Superior called her down. And she had a moment's hesitation because she was so enjoying the ecstasy. But because of the slight fraction of a second of hesitation, the ecstasy was withdrawn, and she had to come down by her own means, very slowly and painfully, branch to branch. And she said, l'agneau parti, je dois descendre par mes propres moyens. The lamb having gone away, I have to descend, I have to come down by my own means. But she was gazing at the Lamb. That is glory. Who cares what others say of us if we can gaze at the Lamb? And if we're ruffled by other people's noise about us, it means that we're not gazing at the Lamb. We're still in this other mode of looking for glory. 1 second after our last breath, we find our truth, and we see what glory is there. Nero left his name in history books, but his last moment was actually through suicide. Alas, his story has not ended. Some years ago, he was heard again. This morning I found words of his in this volume, which by chance I have in Italian. It's what happened in Germany in the mid-1970s during a prolonged exorcism. They found that there were human souls also in the possessed person, and they had to give their name, some of them. One was precisely Nero, and under pressure he was obliged to say certain things. He spoke of what was happening down on the earth at the time. That the forces in which he'd got involved after death were actually at work here on the earth, doing harm, so as to damage the church profoundly. The altar turned towards the people, we're told here, and this is on tape because these were recorded. So it's Nero coming out with this as a human demon in the possessed person. The altar facing the people comes from those of the other side, that is to say the demonic side. This, it is we that have done it. And he goes on to say of us, they have run after the evangelicals like harlots. By order of, now we would say, the top. That means Lucifer. Catholics have the true doctrine, and they run after Protestants. He's saying all this now, and it's recorded. As prostitutes. Catholics throw the doctrine of the truth to the pigs. Let them have it. Synods. In synods, they chat away. The bishops know full well what they have to do. They would not need synods if they followed the Pope. But for them, the Pope is an imbecile. And they are the ones who allow that thing to be received in the hand. We have here indications that there is more going on even in the life of the church than meets the eye. Right now, in this pandemic, one does wonder whether those same Luciferian forces are actually using also influence in other spheres to weaken the sacramental life and the life of grace in general in Christian souls. Even those of the little ones. It is difficult for little children to receive their first communion, and if they do, it may be months after their first confession. So what kind of preparation would that be? The devil particularly wants the children to be ruined before the time. He hates good Holy Communions happening with the little people. It's better if they have a few serious sins on their soul unconfessed. and he can find ways of getting serious sins into their soul. All they need is a gadget in which strange things come up, pushed by the forces of hell. In general, the devil has the whole civilized world rocked to spiritual sleep. How many, even in this pandemic, will have spent all the time in the cybersphere and not looked into themselves? Make sure the time is frittered away. There's plenty of time. Shilkwa, in Prayers of Life, goes through the stages of life. The young man has no time, and he goes on to say why. On he goes, and ends up, there's no more time. And so it is that we have rushed through the game of time without a pause. And the pause comes 1 second too late. This morning, while thinking of the terrible pain of our ancestors in the faith in Rome, I thought, what is glory? What is time? Atrocious martyrdom. There is a land beyond the land I see, a sky unseen behind the clouds that hide the calm awaiting aeons. History begins at its full stop, and angles wide zoom into utter vision at one breath. That came no more to keep the all in poise, suspended by a hair. Oh, barest death, where waited high harmonics or high noise. Oh, symphony of angels, fiend or friend, that none on earth may hear. Here all begins, and never evermore begins to end. Where torture or the fairest laurels wins, and high apotheosis sends a cry into the abyss that heeds not e'en a sigh.